Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed. I'm curious, for you, how important have relationships been in your progression as a businesswoman?
Well, it was always complicated because I had some bad pride, let's say it like this. I told myself, no, I'm a self-made woman, and I don't want to look like the kind of girl who got it because of daddy or because of other people.
Right.
So I always told myself, I want to do things on my own and then tell people, okay, look, I did it because of my own capacities and not because someone helped me. It was also that since early on, I was always in that fear mindset where I didn't dare to open up to other artists because I thought of them as competitors. That really made me feel bad. And once I slowly started to shift and get more into, get to know other artists, I really started to see, like, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, like the power it can actually have to be with other people, to exchange and to be more open about everything business and stuff. One opportunity which really showed how important actually relationships were was last year. I got into the committee of an association of Luxembourgish artists because we decided that we're such a small country, so we group ourselves together.
Right.
And the thing is that one of us got a call for a project by UNESCO. And he suggested it, and then we decided to do a comic for that opportunity. The comic, it was actually so crazy because we got such amazing funds by the government and by other people. And I think that we were a self-published book, and usually it's difficult for self-published books to get into libraries. And because everyone had other skills and knew other people, the book got into every single library in Luxembourg. We even got more orders for the French copy than we had ordered ourselves. So that was totally crazy. And that's really the moment where I realized, yes, okay, it's good you need to open up to people if you want to advance, because you can go only so far on your own. But when you're ready, it's really like the people who are around you that will give you new perspectives, new opportunities and things.
Right. And you hit on something that I think a lot of people in competitive fields deal with, which is viewing other people as competition. And I'm curious, since you've started to see the value in relationships, has that changed your perspective on how you perceive competition?
Well, there was actually this other artist whom I really respected, and he once sent me one of his clients over. And I was like, okay, that's a super big opportunity. Why is he doing this? Because I'm his competitor. Like, that's also something that now that I have changed my mindset around it, that I also try to do now. Like, when I have projects which aren't my ideal fit, or if I don't have necessarily the time for it, then I also try to give back to other people. And especially now with my YouTube channel, it was really a challenge for me to step out of my comfort zone and to really share how can you get into the industry, what are the good tips that you can use. I'm still not completely over it because there are still some times where I just feel like I'm sharing something and then my heart stops beating and I'm like, oh crap, I'm pushing my own competition. But ultimately, I know that it's not the case because it's all in my mindset, and I've seen the benefits of collaborations and being more open and honest with other people. And I think that it's really something that helped me, and I was so happy to have those people around me. So I really want also now to give back now myself.
That's wonderful. And there's one other thing that I want to touch on really quickly, which is something that you've mentioned throughout this discussion and something that I can definitely relate to, which is fear. And how long have you been aware of the role that fear has been playing throughout your journey? And what have you been doing to counteract it or overcome it?
I've started to notice that fear from the first time I started monetizing my work, actually, and it got more serious, and it was during my drawing classes. So the thing was that there was another talented artist in the area, and when I started hosting my lessons, I was super happy, and then that artist came and asked if they could co-host the lessons with me. From that moment on, it was really that I got aware of that fear and that there was competition all around me, and that if I wanted to succeed, I needed to protect myself. And I really started to get that feeling, like my heart started racing and I started shaking, my hands went cold, and it's really a reaction that I don't like at all, but I've been feeling it throughout the last 10 years. And it occasionally comes back depending on the situation, but it's been better. And I think the thing is really to just start accepting that this fear right now is a part of you, and even if it sucks, because it really does, you can't just have a magic wand and make it disappear. And sometimes it disappears quicker, sometimes it stays for a while, but ultimately I think it comes down to your mindset and just telling yourself, it's all right, you can do it, you have already pushed through a few times before and it didn't kill you, so it won't kill you now, and you can do it.
I love that. Yeah. And I've dealt with fear for a long time, since I was younger. And as you mentioned, it comes up from time to time, but having become aware of it, I would say maybe almost like 10 years ago, I started to really become aware of how fear had crippled me and limited me throughout life. And I really had to start making a concerted effort to overcome it, and for me, that came in the just learning more about it, reading books, understanding what type of situations I would encounter that would make me fearful, and trying my best to prepare myself if I knew that I was entering into those situations so that I wouldn't be as afraid as I have been in the past. And as you mentioned, for me, I found that it's a everyday. I wouldn't say I deal with it every day, but it's something that I know I have to be aware of every day because it could come up. Like I don't feel like it's something that I've completely overcome. I feel like there are certain things that do still bring apprehension and bring fear. And I have to do my best to become mindful of when I'm in situations where those things may occur. And I'm really glad that you pointed that out, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, they deal with it, and it's par for the course. And it doesn't really surprise me that, you experienced it when it came to monetizing. I know that one of the things that I dealt with as far as like fear wise, but it goes back to what you mentioned with boundaries, is increasing your price. That can be scary. Like I've been in those situations where like somebody's like, so what's the quote for that? And I'm like, oh man, I'm typing and I'm like, oh, do I really want to put that number? And then it's like, okay, now I got to actually hit send. All right, I hit send, and then, I do it, and they're like, okay. And, it's like, oh man, like they said yes. And it's so refreshing when it happens. And I'll be honest, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, Sabrina, but there were times when I was so afraid to like quote the services for what they were worth that I did the worst thing is like, I was like, well, I know if I gave them my regular rate, it would be too high. So I'm gonna just put half of my regular rate, which I'm sure they'll still think is like way too high. And they said yes. And I'm like, oh man, like now I'm doing all of this work for like half of the price because I was anticipating a no. Like I would, like, it's not even a yes for me at this price, but I thought you were going to say no.
Yeah, no, it's totally that.
Yeah.
And
So I'm really glad that got pointed out, because I want to encourage anybody out there, don't be afraid. Right. I understand you may have the apprehension, you may have that a little bit of anxiety, but if you know that your services are valued at a certain rate, and just go out there, just put it out there, and you will be surprised. I promise you, because even to this day, I still get somewhat surprised by, when I'll send a quote to some clients and they don't even hesitate. They're like, send an invoice. And it's just like, wow, that's
Exactly.
wonderful. So, nah, man, I have learned so much, and I am so grateful for you diving in and sharing and exploring your journey. And I think that it's fascinating, right? Because a lot of people don't start as young as you did at 14. I know when I was 14, I was probably just selling candy at school. Like I wasn't even thinking about, being an entrepreneur or a businessman. And I think that it's so cool that at that age, you were publishing your first manga, you were going out, going to conferences, started teaching less than 2 years later, and look at where you are today. And I know that this is just the beginning. There's a lot more that you're going to accomplish, and I'm excited to just witness it over the years.
Well, I've also come to realize, I think that's also important to point out, that it's really when you truly are like in your zone of genius and totally passionate about what you do and not caring about the money and your fears, that magic things start to happen. Because I've really realized that everything that I've put too much thought and decision and stuff, it didn't have the same results than the things where I just told myself, okay, I'm doing it because I like it and I'll just go for it no matter what happens. Right. And those things always had such big impactful results. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think it through, and it worked. Hello, I'm Sabrina Kaufmann, and I'm a manga illustrator from Luxembourg. So if you like manga, pretty girls, and fashion, then you can find me on my website on sabrinakaufmann.com. Or if you're an aspiring artist, then you can also find me on my artbizacademia.com, where I share lots of artist tips and YouTube videos about how to go from art to business.